truth, and life. Here is the Brother Leon Show. You better recognize.
What's going on, listeners? This is your boy, Brother Leon, and you are tuning into another episode of the Brother Leon Show. So today, guys, we are going to have a phenomenal show today because, like I told you, every voice has validity. So today, we are going to have Mr. Rashaud Peete. And this episode and this show is going to be very different due to the fact that Mr. Peete is an atheist. And so the one thing that I want you guys to understand, this will not be a debate, but it's going to be a dialogue so that we can begin to understand how the Christian church is seen. Because that's the one thing with this election, the one thing that I want you guys to understand is, how does the world see us? Because we have to get to the place where we begin to change ourselves. I'm serious. I think the one detriment that I see with a lot of Christian people is that the decision-making process in them is weak at times. You know, it's almost as if, you know, they need this to make a decision. But God has dealt to every man a measure of faith, but also he's given you intellect. He's given you wisdom. He's given you a brain for you to think with, to decide. So you have the ability to have your faith in action for life. God has given you faith for living. And in living, you have to make decisions. There are so many people right now, they have crippled themselves because what they have done is they got this codependency on religious people. They got this codependency on fivefold ministry. And that's the one thing, man, that we have to change. You cannot have codependency on fivefold ministry because fivefold ministry consists of people. So you're giving yourself codependency on people. And some of these people you're not even in relationship with. So this is what I'm trying to get you guys to understand and see, that today is the day that we change. And so Mr. Peete, he's going to open up his belief system. We're going to talk about it. But I want you guys to view this episode as different because every voice has validity and truth. And we have to begin to see ourselves through the eyes of the world and those who do not believe like us or even speak like us. So, hey, guys, I'm getting ready to call Mr. Peete right now. Hold tight as I pull it up.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Peete? It's Brother Leon.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, real good, man. I was telling the listeners I'm excited about this interview today because this is probably going to be the most different episode that we've had on the Brother Leon Show because, you know, our format is primarily religious. We talk about issues in the community, but it's a lot of religious stuff and also the black church. So I was telling the listeners about this interview today, and I said, man, look, we have to begin to see how those who are outside the church, how the world sees us. So let me just get you, before we start the questions, what you think about this whole election thing? Let me get your opinion on that.
Well, I got to say, I am first and foremost surprised. I discussed, politics with my grandmother regularly.
Yeah.
And I got to say, my grandmother is a very loving person. A lot of how I operate and how I view the world comes from her. So to see this person who I've seen open her home up to people without a home and do all the things that I've seen her do growing up, for her to look at an individual and say, I hate them, says a lot to me. So to see this person that made my grandmother begrudgingly use that word to be finally gone, I am relieved.
Wow.
And the relief doesn't even begin to cover it.
Yeah. Yeah. I hold the same sentiments, but I look at it like this: they get ready to take this to court. But I think my thing is that, like I told people, I said, this is not 2000, and this definitely ain't Gore versus Bush, and this is not Florida. So I like to see how that's going to go down, though.
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping an eye on that.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a whole lot of people. They were celebrating. I never thought that some people would be celebrating the fact that you have an incoming president, then you have an outgoing president. I never seen that type of celebration in my life. I'm serious.
Yeah, that is something to behold.
Oh yeah. So hey, Mr. Peete, I just want to say thank you for coming on, and also just want to welcome you to this platform. So let me start off with the first question: who are you, and what's your background?
Well, I am Rashaud Peete. I am an admin and co-founder of the Black Atheist Facebook group. I don't really have much of a background in religion other than I grew up in it. I've attended Baptist churches, A&E Zion churches, Church of God in Christ churches, and that's pretty much my background. Like, I don't have any formal training or education in theology or anything of that sort.
Okay. So you have a church background. So let me ask you, what made you come from the church background, and what attracted you to becoming an atheist? How'd you get into that?
Well, one thing you definitely learn being an atheist, and you get around other atheists, that you learn that everybody's journey is different. Everybody has those pivotal moments that set them on that path. And for me, I mean, like most other atheists, I asked questions, and those questions were answered, but those answers often fail to be satisfactory. And then in combination with that, I'm already questioning things. And I'll just set the stage here. At the time, I was in the military.
Yeah.
I was in the Navy. I was stationed in Japan. And I'm asking these questions. And I often tell people, even now as an atheist, military chaplains are basically Mr. Rogers in uniform. These are the nicest people you can ever expect to meet or come across. And so they're happy to sit down and talk to you about whatever. And I would sit down and I'd ask these questions, and I would listen open minded, and things weren't adding up, and I began to ask follow up questions, and so the answers begin to kind of fall and crumble, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But so there was that, in addition to for a lot of people these days who are leaving the faith, or not, one of the things they also point to are other Christians, and that was common for me too. I'm a bisexual man, mm-hmm. and I was just coming to terms with that within the Navy, while it was still at the time under don't ask, don't tell. So you're having to, grapple with this thing that isn't accepted or looked kindly upon in the community. And then you have to kind of put on a brave face while people say things like, well, if a gay guy came on to me, I'd punch him in the face. Or for me personally, I had a nurse that I would interact with often who worked in the ER. Had a lot of respect for the guy. And, he was one of those guys that if we were in a life or death situation, I would trust him no matter what. And he basically went on this diatribe about how he felt that LGBTQ people were mentally ill. And you have to kind of just stand there and be like, yes, sir. But internally, like, this person that you looked up to is breaking your heart. He has no idea this happened.
Yeah. So
after that, I just kind of, stopped going to church, and I had a friend who was also an atheist, and he never tried to convince me of anything. He just, hey, consider these things, look this up, make an informed decision.
Yeah.
And so I took all of that together, and eventually I just basically walked away.
Okay. May I ask you this? What were some of the questions you were asking to the chaplains?
Well, for example, I had a discussion with a chaplain outside of the convenience store inside of the hospital outstation, and we were discussing basically what it took to get into heaven. Mm-hmm. And he asked me what I felt would be, basically the bar. And I said, well, I feel as though you have to be a good person. And he just kind of, well, you're halfway there, but not quite. And then, basically got into not just being a good person, but a good Christian. And I was like, well, what about all the other people, like the Buddhists, the Muslims, people who don't per se believe in your God, but they're good people. They're not running around harming people. Maybe they volunteer at a soup kitchen on the weekends. You don't know. But what about these people? And I felt the answer was a little evasive.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, it was something along the lines of, well, kind of, it kind of boiled down to a theological, well, we'll get to that bridge. We'll when we get to that bridge, we'll take care of it. But there's just one of the many questions that I would ask, and it just didn't work.
Okay. So let me ask you this. What was the defining moment where the straw that broke the camel's back, where you just like, I'm turning my back on Christianity and I'm out? Was it that issue that you had with the other officer, or was it, something past that?
It was definitely the officer. That cliche saying you often hear on TV, I know when I'm not welcome here.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. It was like I didn't feel welcome.
Okay.
And why be somewhere I'm not welcome?
Yeah.
And have to deal with that cognitive dissonance where, you're otherwise a good Christian, but, people still give you the side eye if you show up like, I'm married to a woman, but, if if I had a husband, I might show up to church, and, there may be people who are happy to see me, and then there are others who, shoot a dirty look across the sanctuary.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't want to be somewhere I wasn't welcome.
Okay. So let me ask you this. You felt like that when it came to the Christian church and Christians that you weren't welcome?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I totally get that. That's been one of my indictments with the church when it came to the LGBTQ plus community. I'm like, we got to begin to show people love. And I think one of the things that I've been real hard on is you can't take and legislate lifestyle. You can't take and mix, your biblical conviction and theology with nationalism and then try to say that this is how everybody ought to live, because everybody is not Christian. And that's just my stance. So let me ask you.
I agree. I used to say, they always say, Islam is the religion of peace. And I said, well, if Islam is the religion of peace, then going off what you hear, you read in the Bible, Christianity is the religion of love.
Yeah. And
you can't say it's the religion of love and then have conditions on said love. We're not going to take you because you're LGBT plus or what have you. But you have to be accepting of everyone. That learning what I learned growing up, that is what Christ would want.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where I call Christians on. I say, look, we talk about having faith versus fear. And I've never met a group of people in my life, some ministers, that have a problem with homophobia, because, the Bible says that perfect love casts out fear, because fear has torment. So we can't sit up here and preach faith and then in the same token preach fear, because some of the language that's being used against the community is, that the community is full of predators. I'm like, man, predators are predators, whether they're in the community or not. But this is the one thing that I have heard constantly. And so I'm like, look, in order for us to really do the mandate of Christ, we got to begin to love our neighbors as ourselves, because Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples indeed. So I tell people, you got to begin to start changing that narrative. Now, I'm not trying to tell you that you have to be affirming if you're if you're a pastor of a church, that you have to transform your church and make it affirming. That's between you and God. That's between you and your denomination. But if we're going to be disciples of Christ, if we're going to be the type of people who follow after Christ, then we have to not only be loving, but we also have to get to the place where we embrace. We embrace and we accept people as they are, because the church does say this. It says, come as you are, but at times it doesn't mean it. It says, come as you are, but then we want you to assimilate to what we are. But my question is that I look at it like this. The Bible says, Jesus said this, that whosoever cometh unto me, I will in no wise cast out. But it's so many times that I've seen, church people just, cast out people because they felt as though that, okay, you're not changing up to what we think you should be. And that's my biggest indictment. So I definitely understand, Mr. Pete, where you're coming from. Seriously. But let me ask you this. What is theism? What is atheism? Or theism as is. If I'm saying it correctly, theism.
Well, in an atheist book, theism is basically a person or the overarching belief of, I believe there is a celestial being, if you would, some being out somewhere in the universe who, constructs and intervenes in the day-to-day workings of, mortal existence, if you will.
Okay. So is there a difference between an atheist and an agnostic? Or are they both the same?
They are not. An agnostic basically believes, I think there may be a God, but I'm not entirely sure. Or, that is a question we may never get the answer to, but I feel as though there's someone or something there, Yeah. And atheists just flat out not there, if you would, in a court of law, they'd say, dismissed due to lack of evidence,
Yeah.
And that's what an atheist does. We don't have any evidence. So, I'm not thinking there's anything or anyone out there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I like that. I like that contrast. So let me ask you this. Since you've been atheist, how do you view the Christian religion now? Look at it from back then up until now. How do you view it now?
Well, now I see it as, I would say I see it as something that, it's kind of like the government. That if the right people are in the right places doing the right things, that it can do some serious good for a lot of people. But that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
Overall, we have we have churches who set up soup kitchens. They set up food banks. They set up homeless shelters. Me growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, one of the most prominent figures growing up was the Reverend Larry Rice. This guy had constant presence on public access TV, saying this is what we're out here in the city doing for the homeless. He's giving out packs of toiletries and fresh stock and blankets and winter clothes when it started getting cold and food. And that's, growing up, that's what I saw Christianity as. It's like, basically I went to church, went to a food bank every once in a while, or a soup kitchen, and volunteered, just doing good for others. But I'm not really seeing that anymore on a grand scale. I think that it is doing more harm for good than good, especially with the Black community.
Yeah. Please explain that.
So I feel as though there are, we've already touched on LGBTQ. You have certain denominations within Christianity that basically had it out over whether or not to be accepting of them. You have them having it out over whether or not they want to affirm Black Lives Matter. And then you have, your prosperity gospel preachers out here, getting rich off of, otherwise good people, people who just want to be good Christians, who want to see better, who want, the blessings that God is, offering. And these preachers use this money and they create this image and of success and wealth. And then they say, if you give me your money, then you can have the same thing. And these people, they buy books or holy oil, holy water. I've seen all sorts of stuff since I've left religion, and I find it disgusting because you see them truly taking advantage of people who may be miserable, Yeah. And then these people who are miserable, in addition to being taken for their money, are then being told, don't go to a counselor, just pray it away. Yeah. And so they might pray and they feel better for a little bit, but at the end of the day, you're still depressed. You still have, bipolar disorder. You still have borderline personality disorder, whatever. And, all of these things together is just, it's becoming this I would say if I had to describe it, it's basically a frenemy. You have this organization that provides this socialization, community organization, a place for people to go and have a support system. But at the same time, it's tapping of all of this energy and money and well-being. And it shouldn't be that way for a religion that is mandated, basically created by this being who, as far as I'd understood growing up, was supposed to be this all-powerful, benevolent being.
Yeah. I totally get what you're saying, because that has definitely been some of my sentiments, is that the Christian church does not show people how to live. Because if we're going to serve God, God is going to be, he has to be the whole sum of our lives. So that means we have to begin to take our convictions, our faith, the tenets of our faith, our theology, and begin to integrate them into how we live. And so I'm like, look, if God's going to bless me, then I need to put my faith in action. You know, if God's going to prosper me, then every minister should start showing people how money works, you know, how they can be blessed, how they can, you know, define what being blessed is. Because I look at it, being blessed is more than just materiality, because you can have materiality, but on the inside, you're being tormented because of things that may have transpired in your life. So you got to begin to define what is a whole life, what is a healthy life. And so, you know, I'm going to just say this. I apologize for your experience. And I get the fact that there are some experiences that have shaped and molded you. And I am sorry for what you have seen, you know, coming from the Christian church with the merchandising and even in the black community, because that has definitely been one of the things that I've been vocal about, is that even when it comes down to racism, I believe that the church needs to, you know, repent and really admit its part in what it played in slavery, Jim Crow, and the black codes. And even right now, the fact that it's almost like a war against the church versus Black Lives Matter. Now, I get the saying, you know, I get the fact that you know, may have issues with the organization. But when there comes a time when you are angry at the fact of the saying, that's where I draw the line. Because I had an opportunity to partner with the church, and I saw what they did with COVID. I was happy with that. But then when George Floyd happened, I was thinking, okay, well, look, this church is in a majority black city. It's a multicultural church in a black city. So I was thinking they were going to issue a statement. They did not issue a statement, you know, when George Floyd happened. And I was looking for them to say that, you know, we're against this. We need to come together as brothers and sisters. They didn't issue nothing. And so, you know, I asked the pastor, I said, hey, are we going to issue a statement? He was like, no, we're not going to do that. And so I began to ask why. So, you know, I was pretty much told that, and this came from a black pastor, that Black Lives Matters of the devil. This is not my fight. And that God was going to deal with the whole racism problem when we get to heaven, because when we get to heaven, it won't matter anyway. And I'm thinking to myself, like, really? Is that what you think? And so I begin to question, and I begin to see that you're interested in taking the black dollar. You're interested in saving the black soul, but you don't want to do anything to protect and preserve the black body. But yet you have a multicultural church with a white pastor in a predominantly black city, Baltimore. Serious. And this is what I got. And I was like, I'm sorry, we gonna have to part ways, because, you know, they were looking to open up a church where I live at in Delaware. And my question is, how is it that you're going to have a church and not even address the issues of the community for the people that you're trying to reach?
Exactly.
So I totally get where you're coming from. But you know, the one thing I will say is this, is that I'm not going to lie. And people call me, you can call me a fence straddler all day long. I believe that women should have the right to choose. But in the same token, I don't believe that abortion should be used as birth control. I'm like, look, if you're going to be knocking boots, put a condom on. That's just me. Serious. But you know, yeah. I think the thing is that a lot of churches have become disconnected to the communities in which they're supposed to serve. You know, and I totally get it. So here's my next question. Do some of your views even, you know, do they hold like your view with the Christian church? Do you have that same view when it comes to other religions like the Nation of Islam or the Black Hebrews?
Yes. It doesn't really change. I mean, of course, they have their own issues unique to them, but often you see a common thread. It just happens to be a different issue. I know that Brother Farrakhan has softened on his position on the LGBTQ community in recent years, but still, now I will say that I do have a great deal of respect for him, and actually, when they did the anniversary of the Million Man March, I made sure I was there. I had already been to DC that week on business and had to come back only to turn around and drive right back up to DC the next morning just to see him. And, I was sitting there in front of the Capitol building, and he brought up all of these women, and he talked about how they had all of these advanced degrees. They had a master's in chemistry or microbiology, and that to me was very motivational.
Yeah.
At that point, I was on my way out of the Navy. I knew it was coming, and I knew I wanted to go to school. So to see these educated women standing tall and standing proud with these, degrees that are thought, seen as having a high degree of difficulty, is inspirational. And then he goes, "Oh, by the way, they can make a mean dinner," and I just like, "Oh, you had me," until you didn't have to say that. Just celebrate their achievement. Yeah. And you didn't have to bring that up. Me personally, I have a degree in culinary arts. My wife does not enjoy cooking. So often I am the one doing all the cooking, which I don't mind. Like I'm not going to be that type of person. Like, oh, a woman's place is in the kitchen. That doesn't sit right with me. Yeah. So and that felt very, a woman's place is in the kitchen to me, and I was just like that. I don't like that. But and then you have the Hebrew Israelites. Them, I just stay away.
Yeah.
I had a friend that I grew up with who became one, and it just it got to the point where I had to cut ties, which it pains me to this day. Yeah. But again, being a member of the LGBT community, and you see them speaking out against the LGBT community, and it's like, did he forget the conversation where I told him about my experience coming out?
Yeah. Or
is he just ignoring it? And, it's kind of just one of those things where I'm going to block that out of my brain, and you see that happen. I'm not going to continue to stay close to someone who feels that way about the way I exist.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you learn as an atheist, one of the things a lot of atheists go through is that they try to learn as much as possible about other religions, because some in some cases do seek out other religions. They figure maybe I just haven't found the right one, and some convert, or they do their research and they go, well, okay, well, no. And then they just, eventually land on being an atheist.
Yeah.
But I find that the more I learn, I don't necessarily become entrenched. It's just, I learn more and I go, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to stay here.
Okay. Let me ask you this. What have you looked at humanism? Because, it's almost like humanism, agnostics and atheists. It's almost like, you guys are almost in the same lane to a certain degree.
Yes, I have. I just, think about getting involved and then things happen. So, I looked into it before I left the military, and then I got out, moved to a different city, was going to school, at some points was in school full time and working full time. I graduated, moved to a city for an internship that got shut down due to COVID, went back, found a job here in St. Louis, and now I'm up here, and my wife is still in Charlotte. So I just kind of have to, find that happy medium where I am going through day-to-day life and I can begin to branch out into the community, because that is something I definitely want.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So let me ask you this, and I want to ask you about the Black community. Do you believe that theism can, in your opinion, help the Black community? And could you, explain to us how and why? Like I've already mentioned before, it can and it does help through things like various community outreaches, soup kitchens, food banks. I know some churches might even run women's shelters. But I think that one thing that we all tend to kind of overlook is that, yes, the church provides this place for us to organize as a community and to socialize and to build that, that close-knit community, that familial bond between people who, maybe 6 months prior were strangers. But that can be done in other ways, throughout American history. We've had organizations that were secular that popped up, the Black Panther Party, the Not Effing Around Coalition, Move, Black Lives Matter, have all popped up. They built networks. They are building within communities. They're working with the community. And in a lot of cases, they are working with churches when they are willing. And I do think that theism can help, but I think it has to grapple with its more pervasive problems within its community before it can truly begin to move forward and provide substantive assistance in moving forward in the fight. Yeah. Let me ask you this. Would you say that classism is a problem in the theism community?
It's not something that I typically consider, but in America where, there are people who will tell you with a straight face that basically you have to earn your health care, or, well, if you're not working, then why should you get to eat? I wouldn't be surprised at all if such a thing is an issue within the community.
Yeah,
I would imagine that maybe there are churches. I would probably, if I had to guess, maybe mega churches where you maybe you're a little bit closer to the pastor socially if you're able to contribute a little bit more in tithes, you know, and I think that is something that we need to address as well, because you can't get into social issues and, you know, try and fight systemic racism. You can't fight homophobia, transphobia, and not take class into account.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're definitely right. So I think that's one of the things that I say, even, you know, even within the LGBTQ plus community, you know, friends of mine, and I'm a big proponent and I'm an advocate for the community. But the one thing I tell the community, I'm like, hey, y'all got to deal with racism as well as classism, you know, especially because it's like you have white gay men, and it's like, you know, they just out front with the racism at times, you know, but then in the same token, it's as, you know, not only do you have the benefit of being in the community, but you also have white privilege, which makes it even dangerous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's crazy when you begin to see the silence. And then I see the silence when it comes to the murders of, you know, black trans women, and yet you have people within the community who have influence, who have access, you know, that could get that part of the community heard or even put a spotlight on, and yet stay silent. And I think that's the thing that grieves me, because even when it comes down to medical help, medical benefits, you know, hormone replacement therapy, it's almost like, yo, you gotta make sure you got money. And, you know, and even if you have money, it's still like a 50-50 whether or not you're going to get accepted.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I have seen. So let me ask you this. Would you say that theism, or being an atheist, would you call it a religion, or would you call it a state of mind?
What I call theism?
Yeah, theism.
Religion?
A religion, or would you call it a state of mind?
I would say it is a state of mind. You know, I would. It's kind of like you know, it's like a nomenclature. You know, you know, you have the big umbrella of theism, and then you have its subordinate groups. It has its subordinate groups. You know, you have Christianity, you have Islam, and then you have, you know, CGIC and Baptist, and then you have different sects of Islam, you know, and, you know, all of them have that common thread. They believe that there is, again, a celestial being who, you know, constructs and in the affairs of the universe, great and small alike.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that. So let me ask you this. Tell us about your Facebook group. And how did that get formed?
The group was, it's not very old. It broke off from another Black atheist group. We had some key disagreements on the group itself and the way it should be run and whatnot. And one of the things that was a big sticking point for us was that, or for us that broke off, was that, you know, we deal with enough throughout our lives in regards to systemic racism, all the microaggressions, you know, I've had times where I was out driving the speed limit, you know, cruise control on, and then a cop follows me halfway across town. Or I'm out walking and there might be, you know, a beat cop out and he'll watch me walk half the block. And we deal with these things in a number of ways every day.
Yeah.
And then we had to go into this group where we wanted to be able to express ourselves and not have to deal with those things. And then we still have white members of the group who, you know, they come in and they try to gaslight you about what's going on, or you know, basically try to make you feel like what you just saw on the news wasn't really what you just saw. You're just taking it the wrong way, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, we're tired of that. We were very tired of that.
Yeah.
And so we created a group where we only let Black people in. And that wasn't out of any prejudice. We just wanted to be able to not, you know, be able to, you know, to be able to have to, you know, have somewhere to go where we can talk about issues that affect us without someone there trying to, you know, warp our perception of the situation despite having all the facts. Or we even had instances where they just, you know, just wanted to troll and lied and wait and waited until the right moment to just start spewing a bunch of racist rhetoric.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so we created this group, and your listeners may be surprised about this, but we're not in there, you know, just like, yeah, that religion stuff sucks. You know, like, I probably post more, you know, back in the day, they called it the Jet Beauty of the Week. I'd probably post more stuff like that into the group and things about religion. And, you know, not out of any, you know, justification or anything, but just to reaffirm that Black is indeed beautiful, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Or, you know, we have members in the group who like to post memes or funny videos, or we, you know, talk about the latest in pop culture. We're not just, you know, discussing religion. It does come up every now and then, and I do post interesting stories, you know, about things from the arena of theism into the group. And again, your listeners may be surprised to hear, but those are the posts that get the least engagement in the group.
Yeah.
It's kind of we're just like, yeah, okay, we agree on that one thing. Let's talk about other stuff.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I'm not gonna lie, the memes from the election, oh my God, I'm not gonna lie, they probably the best memes of the year. Especially the Avengers. Did you see the Avengers one with Joe Biden as Captain America?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that meme.
These memes couldn't have come soon enough. Like, you know, around this time of the year, something that does come up in our group is that we do talk about seasonal depression.
Yeah.
And, you know, I personally haven't had to deal with it, but there are members of the group who, you know, they've had family members who stopped speaking to them or who disown them, and they've stopped going to family gatherings because it's just too much of a pain, or it's a hassle to have to deal with the shade or looks or whatever. So we do talk about that. So to have those come up now, that was perfect timing, just to bring a little bit of joy back. And that's that coming up every year. That's one of the cool things about the group is we have this community. We've had people who have found love in the group, who they've formed strong friendships. I have members in the group who are best friends. They travel across the country to see each other every now and then, and of course they stay in contact on the internet. For example, I have opened my home up to members of the group on holidays. I offered them a place to stay if they didn't have anywhere to go, and others in the group have done the same. When I had my son, I didn't even put it in the group, but I just put up a link for our baby registry, and members from the group and from the former group that we had spun it off from, caught wind, and we had a pretty decent stream of Amazon packages coming into our house. So, and that's happened for other members of the group too. And it just goes to show that, you can build that community that you have in church, which is something a lot of atheists, when they initially leave the church, they miss that, they miss the community, they miss, singing songs and just connecting with people.
Yeah.
And so to be able to provide that is something I'm very happy to do. And I hope that it, outlives me by, a million times,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the main thing is, once something, is created, that the person that created and the person that it's handed off to, that it grows bigger and it does better than what the previous person, had it. Because I feel as though, like with the ministry that we have here, I told the people, I said, hey, look, I might start it, but hey, y'all going to be the ones to finish it, because, my thing is I can only do but so much, but the vision for it is much larger. The vision for the community is much larger than any one person. So I expect you guys to add to it. I expect multiplication. I expect you guys to do it, take it further than I could have ever take it, because I look at it like this. That's what every father wants for his children. That's what, any person that creates something, that's what he wants, but the one thing that I am happy, and it's almost like you started talking about you're decolonizing your group, and it's just a group for black members. Because what I tell people here is that we're decolonizing our faith. We're taking that whole image, that oppressive image of white Jesus, we're taking it out of our church, out of our doctrine, out of our theology. And that's what we're going for. And I said, we are primarily projecting, this doctrine, this theology is for our community. Now, granted, I don't hate white people. I don't take the tenets of white people as devils, but I look at it like this. Our community needs to be healed. And I said, sometimes we need to be around each other in order for us to heal, in order for us to grow. And it starts with our houses. It starts with our families. It starts with economics, because I look at it like this. Y'all want Black Wall Street to come back. We can't keep giving our money to the Koreans. I'm like, come on, man, really? Seriously. I'm like, the black dollar circulates 6 hours before it leaves the community. And when you look at other communities, like in the white community, 31 days. In the Hispanic community, 18 days. In the Asian community, 28 days, but 6 hours. 6 hours in the black community before it goes off. But then, you know, we always talking about, I can't go to black business, they too high. I'm like, man, please. Y'all been giving y'all's money away to other communities, you know, and they 3-4 generations deep now. So I applaud you. Yeah.
You know, something I always bring up with that, because you know, even in atheist community, you still have that small group of people who still say that, you know, oh, I'm not going to that black business, they do ABC, and I don't like that. And you know, I tell them, well, at least when you walk in their door, you know, they're not looking at you, you know, you don't get the stink eye.
Yeah, you're right.
And you don't have to wonder. You don't have to wonder if they're overcharging you. You know, you don't have to wonder if they're calling you the N-word after you walk out of the room.
Exactly. You know the contrast. Let me ask you this, and this is what I saw before pre-COVID. You have Chinese food businesses set up in black communities, but most of them got plexiglass. But then if you go to a white community, there's no plexiglass. So my question is, why would you spend your money on somebody or with somebody that thinks that you're going to rob them? Seriously. Because I'm like, man, that's a disrespect. You got to halfway holler through plexiglass, put your money in there, and then they bring you the food and they put it in a little spinner thing. Not only goes with Chinese food, but also liquor stores as well. And my question is, if you think it's that bad, why would you set up business in urban cities? But then you have these businesses, they've been around for, you know, 2, 3, 4 generations. But then you go to the suburbs, man, they don't got that. They damn near greet you at the door sometimes. Seriously.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. No, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead. Say what you was going to say.
You know, I you know, it makes me think of that Chris Rock joke from back in the day where he said, you know, there's black people and then there's niggers, you know,
yeah.
and you know, I think of that, and then, you know, I laugh and then I go, and some people took that seriously. And I think those are those people, you know, the people who, I don't go to black businesses, or they start up a business in our community and everything is iron barred and plexiglass to death. You know, trust your people.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the only way we're going to grow. I mean, it starts with our economic houses first. You know, that's how we do it. So let me ask you this. What are some of the convictions? What are some of the convictions that atheist people hold? What are some of your personal convictions?
Well, I would say in general, you know, we typically, this comes up every once in a while when we get into a deep discussion, because there's always somebody who, and that's new to atheism, and they go, you know, well, I thought atheism, you know, I thought atheists thought this, and we go, no, we just kind of go our own way after the, no, we don't believe in God anymore. But you know, we just believe that one can be good without religion, one can be good without God.
Yeah.
You know, none of us, you know, well, you know, most people won't be left in a room with fresh baked cookies and they say, hey, we're just going to wait 10 minutes and then we're going to come back with milk. Most people would wait the 10 minutes. You know, they're like, all right, you know, if I just wait 10 minutes, you know, then I have cookies and milk instead of just this chocolate, you know, taste left in my mouth from all the chocolate chips.
Yeah.
And then no milk. And nobody would be put in that situation and need to consult any sort of pamphlet, manual, or anything. There are just some things that in terms of morality are universal, and in most cases, yeah, you can figure it out on your own. If you truly have a mind and the heart to want to do well and do your best and do as little harm as possible with those you come in contact with throughout life. And you just simply, as Maya Angelou says, you do the best you do the best you can until you know better, and then once you know better, you do better.
Yeah, exactly. So let me ask you this: how can people who may be interested in the theism lifestyle, how can they find you on social media?
So we don't really have any other social media than the Facebook group.
Okay.
You just find us on Facebook if you search Black Atheists. There may be other groups, but it's Black Atheists, no S. And our picture is a banner it's just a simple black banner that says Black Lives Matter. We also have a Discord, but we only let people in there through the group. So you have to get into the group to get into the Discord. And like I said, if you want to talk about religion, fine. You might not get too much engagement on it, but if you have questions, even if you are a believer and you just want to, you don't want to, there are a lot of people who, when they become atheists, there's always at least one person that they come out as atheist to them, and that person freaks out. You're a devil worshiper, and you don't have to continue believing that. We're not. You come into the group if you want to talk, discuss, understand us better, then that's cool. We're okay with that. We don't want it to be 100% of the group agreeing with 100% of the things 100% of the time. We want there to be, discussion, debate, disagreement, because out of that, you tend to find a greater understanding of the world, people around you, and better ways to move forward and better ways to approach the issues that, that plague us as a people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, hey, don't be surprised you get it. I might send you guys, see if y'all can let me in the group.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, because my thing is I want to be able to see how we can start impacting our community, because the one thing that I really believe is this, is that in order for change to come to our community, to the community of Black people, we just can't do it with just Christians alone. It has to be a team effort, because the one thing that I will say is this, is that racism is a team sport. And if we as Black people do not play as a team, we will die by default. Because I'm going to tell you, the Christian church, if it doesn't come together with other communities and other religions of faith that are primarily aimed at helping the Black community, they're going to die off. That's what's happening now when you see some of these church houses are closing down. And now a lot of them, have to go with social media, and they got to start, preparing for the new wave, which is a tech wave, and a lot of them are not ready for it. So, my thing is, hey, we all need to come together. If it's about helping our community, if it's about, us, doing for us and being able to have a Black town, or us to have a little Africa, or things of that nature, or another Black Wall Street, we have to come together. Yeah. But I think, probably the one thing that we have to realize is that we can't do this on our own. We need each other. So I just want to say thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thank you, because you opened up my eyes to a lot of things Thank you for coming on this platform. So can you give us some words of encouragement and wisdom?
Well, to piggyback off what you were saying is that we have to be a united front. Something that we always said in the Navy was one team, one fight.
Yeah, I like that.
Like you said, we can't, you can't be like, well, I'm putting in my work over here. What are you doing? No, we have to move together as united front, Otherwise, we will perish in this fight. But another thing is in my opinion, the been reading it for years, people who don't claim any specific religion or claim atheist, those numbers are growing. And I feel that is in large part of mostly it, I feel is due to the almost outright refusal of the church to be more progressive in terms of social issues.
Yeah.
And so, you have churches that are still proudly anti-LGBTQ or, dead silent on BLM. We've had a Black trans woman killed this month. I highly doubt there are a lot of churches putting out statements to condemn this or saying we need to come together to figure out ways to help protect our trans brothers and sisters from this violence that they see so often.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people point to the Bible to justify that. And so do white people when they look to the Bible to justify racism. Misogynists point to the Bible to justify their sexism. And I've asked this before to believers, and I've never really gotten a straight answer. And I say, at first I say we can both agree that according to your belief system, your God is all powerful, all knowing. Yeah. And they usually say yes. And I say, so you're telling me that this God saw someone putting that in the Bible and all knowing pretty much saw all the suffering that would come as a result. You have people like George Floyd, Matthew Shepard, and so many of our LGBTQ brothers and sisters out here being, assaulted, killed, raped, just for being who they are. All of these things, this all-knowing God saw and gave the thumbs up. And you say your God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and benevolent. Mm-hmm. Yet, you say this is God's word, but, I grew up with those Bibles in the house where, if it was God's word, it was in red. And I always say at no point were any of these verses that you all keep pointing to were read in these books, ever. So maybe that isn't the word of God. Maybe that is just historical context of what was going on at the time. And maybe we should move on from it since it's getting people literally killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, as they say, no lives matter until Black lives matter. Well, Black lives can't matter until bi, trans, gay, lesbian, asexual, whoever lives matter until disabled Black lives matter. None of those people will matter at all. We can't as a race matter if we don't protect them too. We can't go into the fight and then not protect the most vulnerable amongst us. And again, going off of my Christian knowledge growing up, that is something that we, that growing up we were taught we had to do. We had to look out for, as the Bible said, the least of us, to protect the most vulnerable. You can't, pulling from military experience, you can't win a fight not protecting your weakest points.
Yeah, guard your six.
You have to fortify your most vulnerable points if you expect to win the fight. You have to.
Yeah.
And we are doing it to an extent, but we have much further to go.
Yeah.
And, I don't have anything against the church. I'm not sitting here, in my window doing the Birdman hand rub, waiting for the downfall of the church or anything of that sort. But from the outside looking in, the pews will continue to empty until this changes.
Yeah.
And it has to change, not for the sake of the church, but for the sake of our people.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're definitely right. It has to change. It definitely has to change. So, hey, I just want to say thank you for coming on this platform. We definitely have to have another conversation. That's the God knows truth. So, I just want to say thank you. And I really, appreciate you coming on here. I know, I ain't gonna lie, this is definitely different for me and definitely different for my listeners. But I just want to say that this was a conversation that was definitely needed because, my thing is, how does the world see the church? And that's always been my thing, because I think probably one of the things that really gets me is that, the world looks at our hypocrisy and the world looks at some of the things that the Christian church does and then begins to mock it. And it's just like, even with that Paula White meme, I was like, oh my God. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, man, they making a remix out of her. That thing will become popular. Go ahead.
I saw that and I had to laugh to keep from being pissed off.
Yeah.
Because because again, just like I said, this prosperity gospel preacher who's been taking our black dollars and enriching herself and has looked the other way when people like, Rihanna and George go down.
Yeah.
And then you have the gall, the audacity to call for angels from Africa of all places.
Yeah. South America too.
You're calling for angels from places you placed on a ban. You don't want them coming here. Why do you need their angels?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, how you going to get past shithole countries? You don't think the angel in Africa heard that?
Right.
Yeah. So I look at it, and that's why I tell people we got to stop financing our own oppression, because you can't sit up here and give this woman money and then they stay silent on your issues. And, I've taken the same stance with Kenneth Copeland, because I just look at the people that he has on his platform. I'm like, well, who are you going to have on there next? You already got Michelle Bachmann. So what, the Proud Boys are next? So, I just look at, what they say, what they believe, and then I do the contrast in who they have on there. Because you can't sit up here and say that you are for my community when some of the people that you bring on, I'm like, yo, if they saying that about the LGBTQ plus community, what happens when it's us? What happens when they start, talking about black people like that? Oh, they predators, they're this. And I'm like, you got to begin to look at the language that is being said. And I think a lot of us, and I tell black people this. I told a black person this. I'm like, yo, you got to do more than just be woke. You have to be aware. You have to be present to the language that is being used. Because if they can talk about one community like that, what makes you think that they ain't going to talk about us like that? So, that's where I am. That's where I am, because I mean that whole meme with Paula White, not only, I'm like, she just made the church a laughing stock. And I mean that thing grieved me bad, because I'm like, and then the crazy thing is she became the donkey of the day on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God. I'm like, oh my God.
There's I once watched this guy on YouTube, and he coined this phrase, red pill to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And I think I think she may be, basically the theistic equivalent of that. This ain't. She is not about, being Christ-like and preaching the gospel. This is a hustle for her. This was a come up.
Yeah. I've
and
heard
we're all marks
to
her. Because I have to say, growing up, I've heard the way people speak in tongues, and I mean, granted, now I being an atheist, I think it's all BS, but at least they put effort into it. At least it's kind of it's just like her little buddy Trump. I keep pointing it. I have friends that I was trying to point it out to. I was like, you see what he's saying is he's basically laughing in your face, right? Like he's basically flipping you the bird, but you're too busy going, "Oh my God, Trump," to realize that he's flipping you the bird.
Yeah.
For example, one of his last campaign stops, he got on stage and said, "I shouldn't even have to be here."
Wow.
And it's like, shouldn't you want to be there, even though you don't feel you have to be? You go anyway to, fortify your support, energize the base.
Yeah.
Insert other political cliche here,
Yeah. Yeah, but it's
and it I feel her and other ministers who are deep in our community, as the Bible says, wolves in sheep's clothing.
Yeah.
They're there taking our resources, selling us this false hope and preaching the gospel. Meanwhile, they're not even bothering to live by example. We have these people who they tell us they're going to help us become more financially literate while they stand in front of us in a pair of Yeezys. And I feel like she is definitely chief among those people, and that there has to be, I'd hate to use this example, but we need like if the Christian church is going to get cleaned up in the Black community, we need a Black Christian Lincoln project to call these people out and expose them for what they are, because they are a clear and present danger to the community. It has to be done.
Yeah. That's why some of the Black vloggers like King Jives, Tasha K, Larry Reed. That's why some of these guys have platforms, because dealing with the Black church. But I mean, I totally get you, because I think the thing, with a lot of people is that once you are indebted to a person, you can't speak truth to them at times. And that's what I think the case between Paula White and President Donald Trump. Because, I looked at one of her interviews. She said, well, if I ever spoke against God, spoke against President Trump, that's like me speaking against God. So in other words, you're telling me that you're not going to speak truth to power. And the reason why that's not going to happen is because, she owes him a debt. She owes him and everything. I'm like, no, you ain't going to say nothing against somebody that you owe. I totally get that. And I mean, yeah, it is a hustle, because the one thing that I've seen is that coronavirus has exposed the hearts of a lot of people. And I think the thing that really got me the most was that I saw pastors protesting, the government when it came to the coronavirus to open up their doors and still operate at large capacity at 100%. I'm like, you guys are getting mad at the government when the scripture says otherwise? So you're willing to put the sheep at risk so that you can get that, collection plate. Because here's the one thing, and I ain't gonna lie, The preaching game is like the drug game. Seriously. You don't need a degree. You know, I told people this morning. I told them that on my podcast a few days ago. You don't need a degree. You just need to know how to read people. You just need to have the gift of gab. All you need is an organ and somebody that can sing good. Because really, when you look at some of the things about church, about organized religion, I'm like, you in there 2 times a week. You listen for 2 hours every time you go. So that's like 4 hours that you're listening to a person on Sundays and on Wednesdays. When you add that up, 4, 8, 12, 16, that's 16 hours. And the average minister knows that people who come to church don't read their Bibles. So you can say anything. And there's been many cliches. Seriously, there's been many cliches. I've told people this. I'm like, you swear up and down that, some of the sayings that we hear, like cleanliness is next to godliness. That's Benjamin Franklin. But people say that's the Bible. A lot of people say it's Bible, but that's Benjamin Franklin. Charity begins at home. That's not in the Bible. But it sounds good. You know?
You said it enough times, they'll believe it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And so that's why I'm like, you got to start being aware of what is being told to you. You got to learn how to make a decision. And you got to stop being so codependent on a person with a religious title, because you got to learn how to make decisions for your life. Decisions that you can live with, decisions that you can sleep with. And so our ministry is called Truth and Life Urban Ministry. And one thing that we do is we are in a place where we are a place in a space where faith and activism meet. So that's what we do. But our whole thing is making sure that our community of black people is free. And that's what we're working on. We protesting because one of the songs in our church, I said, this is going to be a song when we get an actual church building, we going to have that song, try Jesus, don't try me because I throw hands. I'm serious because the thing is, we got to learn how to fight. I'm like, nah, man. I'm like, look, I love Martin Luther King. But if you swing on me, I'm going to swing back. I'm serious. I'm not going to sit up here and let you come in the church house and then you start letting off. I'm like, oh, hell no. They will take you out in a body bag first. I ask God for forgiveness later. I'm serious. That's just me. I'm not trying to tell everybody to be like that. That's just my personal opinion. But I look at it, man, we have got to do better, because I totally get where people, say and they believe that the church has crippled communities. I totally get it now. I'm serious, because when I look at some of the things in the political spectrum and I see the nationalism mixed with Christianity and mixed with Bible, I'm like, and then you hear ministers say that, oh, God has called me to protect the Constitution. I'm like, oh my God, here we go. Because when you look at the Constitution, it never included black people. I'm serious. Right. It never included black people. We was considered 3/5 of a man. So you're trying to say that you defending the Constitution. So if you saying that, I know you ain't defending me. You might want my money.
Yeah, I actually posted on Facebook the other day. I said, our country's Constitution is written by people who couldn't even decide on what to call the president for a month. Wow. Maybe an update is needed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's 2020. We still don't have the Equal Rights Amendment ratified.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And
the land of the free and the home of the brave, where anybody, if they work hard enough, can achieve their dreams. I'm pretty sure either Joe or Kamala said that at some point in their speeches. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I'm willing to bet that they said something to that effect. But yet, how long did it take for an anti-lynching law to be passed?
No, I think isn't that still
meanwhile, they were coming up with excuses not to do it. While we were finding black bodies hanging from trees all over.
Yeah. I was at a protest and I told the people at the protest, I said, hey, look, I want y'all to say my name, because whatever I say today, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not depressed. I'm not mentally ill. If you find me hanging from a tree, it's the fact that somebody got me. So don't ever think that I committed suicide. I'm like, nah, y'all better say my name, and I'm not mentally ill and I'm not depressed. I told them that before I started talking, because I mean, it was just people popping up, just one here and then one. I'm like, it can't be that many black people depressed and then hanging from a tree.
Yeah, of all the means to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's...
And they all just happen to know how to tie it in.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I told them. I'm like, oh, it just pops up. It just happened that way. I'm like, man, please. It was a strategic hit. And that's how I view it. But I totally get where you coming from. I'm serious, man. Mr. P, I totally get where you are coming from. So, hey, I just want to say I believe in your power of goodness, your power of compassion and community. And I just want to say, sir, I applaud you for that. And I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
So, again, tell us the name of your Facebook group and how people can join.
You just, pop us in the search bar, Black Atheist. You'll see the Black Lives Matter banner. We just have a few questions that you have to answer, and we let you in. We have a handful of admin, a great group of people. They root for me in my personal pursuits, and they check up on me and my wife and my son, and that's just the kind of community. And you don't have to be an atheist to come, to be in the group. You just got to be black and concerned about improving the state of black people everywhere.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'm gonna definitely see if y'all invite me in. But hey, I just want to say thank you for this time.
Absolutely. Come by.
All right. I definitely will. You have yourself a blessed day, sir. Thank you.
You too. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. It's been a pleasure. All right. Bye. Thanks. All right, guys, that was Rashaud Peete. So, hey, here's the one thing, man. We definitely have to change the view and how the world sees us. We have to begin to change how we interact with our communities, because the one thing that I'm taking away from this whole election season is that we have to change. I'm serious. We are going into 2021 and we have to begin to change with the season, because we're going out of one season into the next season, and God has given us grace and he's given us a way of change. But it begins with us. It begins with our household. It also begins by us having conversations with communities that may not agree with us, that may not believe like us. But the one thing that we have to do, we have to come together as a team, because if we don't, we are going to die by default, because racism will always be a team sport. White supremacy, a team sport. And so we got to begin to come together as people. And that's the God knows truth. We got to come together, because if not, we're going to end up dying. And I'm tired of seeing us die. Our young men, our young women, visions dying, dreams dying. We got to come together as a team. We got to come together as human beings. We got to come together as black people, for our black children, for our black community. Because I'm going to tell you right now, man, look, when you start getting in some of these conversations, there's nothing specific for black people. That's why I had a problem with the platinum plan. Nothing specific for black people. But the one thing that I will say is this, is that Joe Biden has to thank black people for getting him over. And so the thing is, we got to have something in return. Seriously. When you look at the black women, when you look at the black women that have been out here doing the work, man, you owe them. And so I'm thankful that we had this conversation with Mr. Peete today, because he has given us a new perspective, and I totally see where he's coming from. So guys, hey, look, I want you to have a blessed one. We are definitely, man, I can't wait to post this because it's definitely different from anything that we have had on our show. So we definitely got to do another interview with Mr. Peete.
Walk in the truth that makes you free every day. Follow Brother Leon on all social media outlets.